Welcome to House of History. The Dutch city of Breda is located in northern Brabant, a province in the southern part of the Netherlands. Aside from its cultural riches, a pretty well-known prison named the Koepel, or the Dome, is situated there. In the wake of the Second World War, the prison housed all Dutch war criminals serving life sentences. Some of them had their death sentence commuted, others simply served life. 111 Dutchmen and 63 Germans. Among them were Breda's seven Dutch former Waffen-SS war criminals serving life sentences. Yet 7 years after the Second World War came to an end and the Dutch court sentenced these men to life, they managed to escape the prison and flee the country. This event dominated the national headlines, and there was an enormous public backlash. Not so much because of the escape itself, but because of the aftermath. Although it was known where the escapees fled to, and where they resided, it appeared that all of them managed to get away with it. In 2018, the Dutch National Archives released confidential ministerial letters, memos, and reports regarding the escape. These provide a candid look in the subsequent diplomatic fallout. On December 26, 1952, Boxing Day, the prison hosted a movie night for the inmates. The 1935 black and white Austrian comedy Der Himmel auf Erden was played in the common room, but 7 former Waffen-SS members and war criminals serving life sentences weren't watching the film. Herbertus Bicker, Sander Borgers, Klaas-Karel Faber, Jacob de Jonge, Willem van der Neut, Willem Polak, and Antoine Toussaint were planning their escape, with help from sympathizers on the outside. Letters and documents reveal these men were serving their sentences for a long list of crimes against humanity. During the Second World War, they committed murder, abuse, reprisals against unarmed civilians. They aided and abetted the deportation of Jews, and some of them were even camp guards themselves. As soon as the common room lights extinguished, the 7 prisoners snuck to the prisoners' boiler room. They picklocked the door that led them to the courtyard. One of the men worked in the boiler room and hid a ladder under piles of coal there earlier that day. Using both a ladder and a fire hose, all 7 managed to climb over the 5-meter-high outer perimeter wall unnoticed by any guard. Outside, 2 cars stood at the ready, a Plymouth and Chevrolet. It appeared the men received help from the outside, and that this escape wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. It had been thoroughly planned. After the men jumped into the cars, they drove to Germany. Within 2 hours, at around 10 p.m. that night, they crossed the border. Upon arrival in Germany, they reported themselves to the local police. Some sources indicate the local police officer that happened to be on duty that night was a former SS officer himself, instantly sharing the department's Christmas stollen and brewing the prisoners a pot of coffee. Meanwhile, in the prison, halfway through the film, the lights suddenly turned on. Someone tipped the guards. An escape had taken place. Although the guards were unsure who and how many escapes there were. After a roll call, they counted 167 prisoners. 7 were missing. But it was too late, and most of the prisoners would never return to the Netherlands. During the subsequent proceedings of German authorities against the fugitives, a German district judge, Dijkman, convicted all of them for illegally crossing the border. They were fined 10 marks each. The fact the men only had Dutch guilders to pay the fine didn't really matter. It appeared they quite literally escaped justice. Now, you'd expect the men to be extradited to the Netherlands as the German authorities found out they resided in the country. Because, well, they were Dutch citizens. Yet that wasn't the case. Since 1943, any person of a Germanic nation, such as the Flemish or Dutchman that joined up with the Wehrmacht or Waffen-SS, automatically received German citizenship. This was thanks to the so-called Führererlass, directives issued by Adolf Hitler himself. Post-war German law prohibited extradition of its own citizens, so German courts used this argument to obstruct any way, shape, or form leading to these Dutch fugitives' extradition. In turn, all of them began new lives in Germany. It's fascinating to read letters from the Dutch ambassador, Pim van Boetzelaar, complaining about this ridiculous argumentation, because all these men are as Dutch as can be. 3 years after the escape, in October 1955, the German ambassador to The Hague received a firm reprimand from the Dutch government. In a letter, the government complained about the deterioration of confidence in the German rule of law. mainly because German courts used the Führererlass as an argumentation not to extradite the fugitives. After all, the decree was a thoroughly National Socialist decree issued by Hitler himself. How could Germany, after all the crimes committed by the Nazi regime, uphold such an order? Writing about the case in private letters, the Dutch Justice Minister Leender Donker complained about it being highly unsatisfactory and completely untenable. He also criticized the Dutch Foreign Minister, Joseph Luns. Apparently, Luns promised to ensure that he'd reach an agreement with the Germans regarding the issue, but 3 years down the line, there was no word of it yet. Coded telegrams sent by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs reveal a painfully obvious absence of Allied country support. In one such telegram from February 1955, they write that extradition of bandits isn't a priority in Washington, London, or Paris. They had bigger fish to fry. To be fair, due to the Cold War, there was an ever-increasing tension between the Soviet Union and the Western nations. It was a priority to ensure support from West Germany, and agitating them by twisting their arm into extraditing the men could work counterproductive. Dutch interest was secondary to these massive geopolitical interests, forming a bloc against the Soviet Union and its satellite states. This too became painfully obvious to the Dutch government. On October 27, 1955, Minister Donker wrote that any chance of extradition of these men is close to zero. It is a lost cause. And Donker wasn't too wrong. All men got away with it. Well, except Jacob de Jonge, a former camp guard who ended up not being eligible for German citizenship. He was extradited to the Netherlands and served part of his sentence. I couldn't for the life of me find out how long he served or why he was extradited and not eligible for German citizenship, but it's safe to say he didn't serve his life sentence upon return. As for the prison itself, the immediate aftermath of the escape, the prison, housing dozens of war criminals, increased the height of the walls and erected multiple guard towers. Curiously enough, the 3 men driving the cars and helping the escapees were arrested and put on trial in the Netherlands. All 3 were native Dutchmen from Amsterdam. It turned out they served prison sentences in the aftermath of the war for assisting the Germans during their occupation of the Netherlands. Dutch newspapers publicized their names and their defense. The interrogation reports are included in the secret archives of the Dutch Justice Ministry. It was quite laughable, to be fair. They stated they were simply driving around looking at Dutch meadows when they ran into the group of escaped prisoners. On a whim, they decided to give the men a ride. They supposedly didn't know they were helping war criminals escape. At any rate, all 4 were sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for aiding the escapees. Herbertus Bicker, nicknamed the Hangman of Camp Ammen, ended up standing trial in Germany. In 2003, 51 years after his escape, the Germans charged him with the murder of a member of the Dutch resistance, Jan Houtman. Yet psychiatrists advised the court that Bicker wasn't mentally capable of understanding the charges brought against him, and as such, the German courts decided to halt prosecuting him. Bicker was never convicted for his crimes, just like the others, except de Jonge. Thank you for watching this video. If there's a topic or event you'd like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also really like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and want to support my work, consider checking me out on Patreon and becoming a channel member. For just $1 a month, you will gain access to the exclusive Patreon series. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.